Good morning. Welcome to Baptist for Liberty. I'm your host, Joanna Works. Today is Wednesday, July 16th. Real quick, I just want to cover a couple of news stories that came out yesterday. One is California bill would permit secret seizures of firearms based on a single complaint. The California State Senate sees their share of interesting and controversial legislation proposals. One of the most recent bills, Assembly Bill number 1014, is one which, if passed, would permit the secret seizure of a California state resident's guns after just one complaint that they pose a risk of committing an act of violence. California Assembly members Das Williams, a Democrat from Carpintera, and Nancy Skinner, a Democrat from Berkeley, first introduced the legislation last year. Favor of the bill increased after the Island Vista shooting rampage on May 23rd, when the shooter's mother claimed she had raised concerns about her son's mental state, but no action had been taken. Even if no crime had been committed, the bill states that it would permit a court to issue an ex parte gun violence restraining order along with a firearms seizure warrant based solely on the reckless use, display, or brandishing of firearms or on the recent acquisition of firearms or other deadly weapons. According to the bill, the petition for a restraining order on ownership of firearms can be filed by an immediate family member, licensed therapist, or licensed healthcare provider. The last one particularly is rather interesting. And any individual who knowingly files a false petition with the intent to harass will be guilty of a misdemeanor. Now, I had to say that about a licensed healthcare provider being interesting because anybody watching some of the things going on with Obamacare probably heard this before. Your medical physicians can ask you, or your minor children without your being present, whether you have firearms in your house, and ask other questions that has absolutely nothing to do with providing health care. Alright, so to summarize this, the National Rifle Association, NRA, was among the organizations opposing the bill. Charles H. Cunningham, the Director of State and Local Affairs for the NRA, wrote a letter on behalf of the association. He called the bill one of the most egregious violations of civil liberties ever introduced in the California legislature. One of Cunningham's major issues with the bill was with the fact that anyone would have the right to file for a restraining order and to obtain a restraining order against someone they think shouldn't own a firearm. Cunningham pointed out that a disgruntled neighbor, a former employee, an ex-girlfriend, or any other scorned or vindictive individual would be given the right to the deprivation of a law-abiding citizen's Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, as well as his or her Fourth Amendment right to be free from improper searches and seizures. Another part of the bill Cunningham disagreed with was the fact that it offered lawful gun owners no opportunity to be heard before their firearms are confiscated. The idea that police officers will be legally obligated to treat citizens who, in many cases, aren't even accused of a crime as dangerous armed individuals is a new and disturbing innovation in the law, wrote Cunningham. Our next one, a group that sued IRS for targeting claims it has not been interviewed by FBI. True the Vote, a conservative vote monitoring organization that sued the IRS last year for unfairly delaying their application for tax-exempt status, has revealed that neither the FBI or Department of Justice has interviewed the group, refuting what Attorney General Eric Holder had asserted to ABC News over this past weekend. Catherine Engelbeck, president of True the Vote, was interviewed on the Washington, D.C. radio station WMAL by Larry O'Connor to discuss the lawsuit. O'Connor asked Engelbrecht about Eric Holder's recent dismissal of needing a special prosecutor for the IRS scandal, declaring that the Justice Department FBI are doing, in quotations, doing a good professional job, in quotation, in their investigation. And this is a quote from Miss Catherine Engelbrecht. You have been at this, this is a quotation from O'Connor. You have been at the center of this IRS scandal. I think many would say your group was specifically targeted, and over the weekend Attorney General Eric Holder was asked about the IRS scandal and the calls for an independent investigation, and he said no need for it because the professionals at the Department of Justice and the FBI are doing a great job investigating this. And her reply was, yeah, that would be exactly no, zero, no time have they approached us, only when they are investigating us, only when they are being adversarial toward us do we ever hear anything from the Department of Justice. And he responded back, the Attorney General says the FBI and the career attorneys at the Department of Justice are doing a great job investigating this, and they haven't talked to you at all yet, after over a year? No, said Engelbrecht. Speaking at a lawsuit hearing last Friday between True the Vote and the IRS, District Judge Reggie B. Walton ordered the IRS to provide information about former IRS official Lois Lerner's destroyed hard drive. Walton's order came one day after District Judge Emmett G. Sullivan ordered the IRS to explain how it lost thousands of emails in a separate hearing from a lawsuit filed by Judicial Watch. And this is our third and I think our final story for this. New CISPA, that's CISPA, Cybersecurity bill passes through Senate committee. Alright, they're doing it again. I think almost every September for the past couple of years they've been trying to get this CISPA bill passed. And now they're doing it, I guess, trying to get it done earlier while people are distracted by summer activities. The Cyber Information Security Act, CISA, CISA, has passed through the Senate Select Committee on Tuesday by a vote of 12-3, pushing the bill one step further to reach the Senate floor. CISA is the latest reincarnation of Internet security-based bills to be voted on by the government. Last year, a similar bill called the Cyber Information Sharing and Protection Act, CISPA, passed the House but was met with controversy over what opponents of the bill called a lack of privacy protections. The Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, so this current bill, reports Julian Hapdam from The Hill, makes it possible for companies and government agencies to share information about possible hackers and security weaknesses with each other, which advocates say is critical to make sure that blind spots aren't left untended for long. Senate Intelligence Chairwoman Dianne Feinstein, Democrat California, one of the people responsible for the creation of CISA, argues the bill would allow businesses and government agencies to more easily exchange information with regards to cyber attacks. Feinstein said, according to VPN Creative, every week we hear about the theft of personal information from retailers and trade secrets from innovative businesses, as well as ongoing efforts by foreign nations to hack government networks. This bill is an important step toward curbing these dangerous cyber attacks. Opponents of this bill and similar bills have used the Edward Snowden leaks as evidence of the government and NSA abusing cybersecurity flaws in the name of national security. Senators Ron Wyden, Democrat Oregon, and Mark Udall, Democrat Colorado, both voted against the bill, saying in a joint statement, they agree cyber attacks are a serious threat to American infrastructure, but they have also seen how the federal government has exploited loopholes to collect Americans' private information in the name of security. The Center for Democracy and Technology also found fault with the bill, saying on the group's website the bill fails to recognize and address recently disclosed cybersecurity-related conduct of the National Security Agency. some of which undermine cybersecurity. The CDF also says the bill would allow law enforcement agencies to wiretap individuals in the name of cybersecurity. The bill will be heard next by the whole Senate and will be voted on in the coming months. And this article was written by Zach McAuliffe at benswan.com. All of these were actually from benswan.com. Alright, so now on to, I think, I was rather excited about this, and I almost started the show with this, because I thought it was so cool. Alright, so I was watching YouTube, and as usual, a commercial popped up, and a lot of times the commercials are really annoying, and I don't really care about it, and I haven't seen a good movie trailer in a really long time. But a couple of days ago, this movie trailer starts playing, and I was going to hit the skip as soon as I was able to, but this trailer just pulled me in. I was so excited, not only because the movie looked good, but because this was the first time I've seen an interesting movie in a really long time. So this is one I might actually want to go see in theaters. And it's called Unbroken. And it's supposed to be based on Louie Zamperini, a real-life American who went to the Olympics when they were held in Germany. And he was planning on going to the Olympics in Japan, but those Olympics were never held because of, World War II broke out. So he joined the Air Force, but he would run laps and everything every free moment he could to just make sure he stayed fit and ready for running as soon as the war was over. So anyway, this trailer, though, it stays focused on a lot of the action, and it showed, the plane crash and a lot of interesting things, and it really builds up the tension and things. It was a really good trailer, maybe a few seconds too long, and it made me wonder, because of the way it cut back and forth between scenes, if maybe it'll focus with him on the raft for a lot of it and doing flashbacks of things that happened beforehand, or if it'll actually tell his life story in a linear way. But that night, I saw this in the afternoon. I got off the computer and stuff. I don't remember what the YouTube video I was originally going to watch was. But later, I was looking up something completely different, and all of a sudden I see something that says Unbroken on it. A true World War II story of survival, resilience, and redemption. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I clicked on it, and it's this 37-minute long documentary about Louie Zamperini. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And it has, the same title of the movie, so I don't know if this was made kind of in the lead up to the movie, because this YouTube video documentary was posted in August of last year. And the Unbroken movie isn't supposed to come out in theaters, I think, until December. But, so I watched the documentary, and it was really good, and spoiler alert, so if you want to watch this movie or the documentary, I'm sorry, there's going to be some spoilers, but since it is, based on history, oftentimes we already know certain things ahead of time. Okay, but I'm still putting the spoiler warning right here. What really touched me the most was this guy. He went through so many life-changing events and devastating things. He was on a rescue mission. A plane had crashed, and him and the people on his plane were supposed to go, I forget what kind of plane they were on, sorry. Were supposed to go find these other people that had crashed and rescue them. And they were told that the plane that they were flying was fit to fly. Well, it wasn't actually fit to fly. And they end up crashing. And of the people who crashed, only 3 of them survived and got onto the raft. And then, one of the 3 in the raft didn't make it. And eventually, after weeks and weeks of being on this raft and everybody back home thinking that they're dead. They land on an island, and this island is in Japanese hands. I believe they said it was Marshall Islands. And so they get picked up by the Japanese, and they're sent to a POW camp. And life there was extremely cruel. And there was one particular Japanese soldier that was like in charge, and he was very abusive to the POWs. And eventually, though, they moved to a different camp, which was even worse. And Louie Zamperini, he was thinking, when he defied the Japanese authorities because they wanted him to go on radio with a script that they had written, and he absolutely refused to do the propaganda. The first radio program he did for them was it was a message that he wrote, and it was written in such a way so that his parents would know it really was him. And the Japanese was fine with that. I think, they wanted the first broadcast by these prisoners to give legitimacy that this was really them before they gave them the scripts and propaganda that they wanted them to speak. Well, Zamperini absolutely would not have any part in the propaganda. So they said, well, you're going to go to this camp next if you don't do this. And he said, no, I won't do it. And he thought, he would finally get away from this Japanese soldier, and he didn't care how bad this other camp was as long as he was free. And the American soldiers took to nicknaming this particular Japanese soldier the Bird. So he thought to himself, as long as he was free from the Bird, he would be fine. So lo and behold, he goes to the camp, and who's there but the Bird? And he went from hope to another devastating blow. And there were several of these, there's hope, and then there's bam, like a punch in the gut. And eventually, though, the war ended, and he's back home, and he's trying to restart his life, and he's determined that he's just gonna go on with his life. But in the back of his mind, he has this idea that if he ever makes money, he's gonna go back to Japan, and he's gonna kill the Bird. And he's just eaten up by this bitterness. And this is where I think the story is really one that's worth listening to. His wife sees how eaten up and bitter he is, and insists on him insists on him going to a special tent service. So they go to one held by Billy Graham, and the Lord saved Louie Zamperini. And the miracle of grace and change, it's not just enough to take the bitterness away. Now Louie Zamperini wanted to go to Japan to face those soldiers who had brutalized him, to tell them about Christ. So he went to Japan, and he talked to some Japanese people, and he gave lectures and just telling his story and telling them about Christ. But he never got to face the Bird. The Bird had gone into hiding because he was a war criminal. And you see these videos of Louie Zamperini during his first trip to Japan, and these soldiers, they bow at the waist, and they keep their distance. You can tell the body language. It's not just the polite Japanese body language. It is a very on guard keeping their distance. And Zamperini just reaches out for their hands and insists on shaking their hands, and just being as warm and cordial as possible to physically show, his physical body language and everything really matches his words here. And, the documentary is dialogue and interview and, the narrator, but when you see these clips. You just watch the body language in these clips, and I think that's just like really fascinating, because you really do see a man full of the Lord's joy and wanting to share that with the people that treat him horribly. And I know there's so many veterans that they come back from wars with very racist mentalities, and some of it could have been because of the propaganda they had before even going into the wars, but a lot of it is because they see, this group of people that they're fighting against and the way they treat them, and so it creates a bitterness. And then you have Louie Zamperini, and it's not of him, because he was bitter and he wanted revenge, but it was the working of the Holy Spirit, and that is just awesome. And when I mention veterans being bitter or racist, this isn't like all veterans or every single one of them as a group, but it's one of those things that's not rare, it's not uncommon, and there's a lot of reasons for it. The psychological warfare from all sides within any wartime propaganda things, it does build up a sense of we're better than them and they're attacking us, and so we have to go and crush them. Or even if it's propaganda, well, we're going to go give them democracy, but there's still this underlying, well, they're not as good as us. And oftentimes, as the U.S., okay, we can see that in our propaganda, but you look at other countries and they say some of the exact same things. It's just worded different to match whatever their culture is and the specifics of their ideologies. But the general message is still the same. And I don't want to make it sound like all war veterans of all time periods are racist. That I'm just saying that the environment is there to set those kind of seeds. And I think it's just absolutely wonderful, though, to see the work of the Lord on this man's life, because he certainly had a lot of seeds of bitterness. And in the documentary, when he's going back and he's talking about his time in the POW camp, and when he's talking about his life after the POW camp, he had the post-traumatic stress. They didn't call it that at the time, but we understand that in today's language, that's what it was. And the Lord healed him of that. And it's just, I think it's a beautiful story, and that part of the story, I think, is the most fabulous part about it. It's just the most miraculous, amazing. I can't think of enough words to describe that. And if you watch the movie trailer and the title being called Unbroken, and I have this sinking suspicion between the movie and this documentary that they're probably, because there is a book of the same title. And the movie trailer, it makes you think, well, it's a story about the unconquered human spirit. But if you look at, Louie Zamperini and what the Lord did to him, it's not about the strength that we have in ourselves as humans. It's really about the strength we have when we lean on God. Zamperini was stubborn, and it goes through and it shows, he got in trouble with the law because he was so fast he could create mischief in his hometown as a kid and everything, and everybody knew he was the fastest kid in the area, and so he became, a track star, and so he turned that mischievous gift of his into something positive. And when he was in the POW camp, he was stubborn and refused to let the soldiers break him. And that's good, it's nice to have a sense of using, instead of just being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, but to keep your sanity as much as possible and to defy these wicked men like that. such as refusing to be part of the radio propaganda scheme. That was really amazing, but our human strength and stubbornness can only get us so far, and a lot of times it does actually get us into trouble. And you see that in Zamperini's story. There was times where his stubbornness actually just, it wasn't used the best it could be. And it just, the miracle of the Lord healing and forgiveness, that's, I think, is I can't reiterate that enough, especially after yesterday's program. There's so much hate on so many grounds. We got war all around us, and it's gonna get worse as the end times, it's drawing closer. We're coming to an end here. And just to have a story of God's work, and he still does that. He still touches people and gives them the strength to carry on, gives us the strength to forgive. And let's face it, that's probably one of the hardest things for us to do, is forgive those who've treated us the worst. It's much easier to forgive those that, in the little offenses, because they're family or they're friends or whatever, but to forgive somebody we've thought of as the enemy for so long, that kind of forgiveness, I think, only comes from the Lord. And think about it, He loved us when we were still in enmity with Him, when we were still His enemies. He forgave us. He died on the cross for us. He gave His life for us when we were still enemies. And to have a story to remind us of that, I think, is definitely something we need these days. I think the only thing I'm really disappointed is that this movie isn't coming out next week, because I would go see it then, but I have to wait till December to see it. But I'm looking forward to that movie, and I don't think watching a documentary or hearing the end of it spoils that at all. And I really hope the movie lives up to my expectations. But I think that's it. I'm just going to close with our Proverbs for today. And our Proverbs today is Proverbs chapter 16. The preparations of the heart in man, and the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord weigheth the spirits. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. The Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the days of evil. Every one that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. By mercy and truth iniquity is purged, and by the fear of the Lord men depart from evil. When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. A divine sentence is in the lips of the king, his mouth transgresseth not in judgment. A just weight and balance are the Lord's, all the weights of the bag are his work. It is an abomination to kings to commit wickedness, for the throne is established by righteousness. Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right. The wrath of a king is as messengers of death, but a wise man will pacify it. In the light of the king's countenance is life, and his favor is as a cloud of the latter rain. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding rather to be chosen than silver? The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Better it is to be of a humble spirit with the lowly, than to divide the spoil with the proud. He that handleth the matter wisely shall find good, and whoso trusteth in the Lord, happy is he. The wise in heart shall be called prudent, and the sweetness of the lips increaseth learning. Understanding is a wellspring of life unto him that hath it, but the instruction of fools is folly. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth, and addeth learning to his lips. Pleasant words are as in the honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and health to the bones. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. He that laboureth for himself, for his mouth craveth it of him. An ungodly man diggeth up evil, and in his lips there is a burning fire. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. A violent man enticeth his neighbour, and leadeth him into the way that is not good. He shutteth his eyes to devise forward things, moving his lips he bringeth evil to pass. The hoary head is a crown of glory if it be found in the way of righteousness. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord.